Okay, we are here. This is our, as they call, the consolation prize. If you've ever gone to any fairs, any of those at elementary schools growing up, this is the consolation prize. K-Chung Studios, strange technical situation, so we decided to go ahead and do the podcast and make some use of this. And so I'm here with Craig Spivak, comedian extraordinaire, and we were just talking about Fishbone and how Yachtly Crew is going to be playing at the Surf Rodeo and then also at the 311 Cruise. And so Craig decided to tell us his intriguing story.
What do I?
Let's listen in.
Okay, so you did. It's like a Huell-Hauser mic.
Yeah.
It looks like a clown mic that you're pointing at me with a phone attached to it. It's really.
I almost feel like it should have a little face on it so you can like look at it so it just smiles up at you.
I'm expecting like it to squirt water at me or something like.
Right, where like one of those clown flowers where like
It's like a clown
gets you
flower.
right in the eyeball. Yeah. That's right.
Because we're so high tech here.
That's
we're
right.
The utmost professionalism here at the NoHo Cafe. Is that where we're? NoHo Cafe. God bless. I've never been. It's great.
Surrounded by the, and you'll see the photos. I'll upload this to the Inspirado Projecto website. Surrounded by photos of the original cast members. I'm not sure what that woman's name is, but then there's Gilda Radner, and there's
Lorraine Newman.
Oh! Is she around? Is she still
Absolutely.
doing stuff?
She's a huge voiceover.
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Then we got John Belushi, and we got
John Belushi.
Bill Murray up there.
The big four here: Lorraine Newman, Gilda Radner, John Belushi, and Bill Murray.
The super team.
But there's no autographs or anything like that. I don't think they were. Hello.
Ready?
Oh yes.
Okay. What can I get for you?
I want more coffee, definitely.
What can I get for you to eat?
Just a plate of fries with ranch dressing on them. Thank you.
I would love to have the number one with scrambled eggs, please.
Scrambled? Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how did you meet Angela Moore? How did this whole thing
Okay, so
evolve? All the details.
You and I were talking about the
All the giblets and drippings. We need to hear
That's
this.
right. Well, you're going to be on a boat with Fishbone and 301 coming up, jamming, which is just a dream come true. And then I hadn't thought about this in 20 years, but I did in fact meet Angela Moore about 20 years ago. I was open micing, and I went to an open mic at the Cobalt Cafe in Topanga Sherman Way. And if you're local valley trash like we are, like you know all these coffee houses that are no longer there that used to do these open mics.
Wait, it's gone now?
Oh.
I hope not. That was one of the places I originally did some open mics at.
As Curt moves his mode of transportation out of the booth, and the skateboard will make the waitress trip. Oh my God, we are just the utmost. We are just trashy people. It's wobbling like right in front of me. It's really strange.
I know. Well,
It's really funny. It's okay.
it's wobbling. It's talking.
It's a clown mic. It's really bad.
It's the ventriloquist mic.
Really. Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
More coffee. I want to say, keep it going, dudes.
Hey, keep it going.
It's that kind of coffee shop that we're in. It's
Hey,
like-
it is. It is.
This interview should be taking place at 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Just like,
We could pretend it's 3 a.m.
keep the coffee coming, dudes.
Keep it coming. Barely hold my head above water over here.
So this is Deep Valley lore, but there used to be a coffee house called the Cobalt Cafe, had a blue colored theme or whatever, and it was just your typical crappy coffee house that just dotted the streets all over the valley. The coffee, it's not like the coffee was great or anything like that. It wasn't. It was crap. Everything about it was crap. The whole place was crap. But it was still an interesting place to hang out. I was there very briefly, and they ran an open mic. And because it's in that area and in the valley, you never know who's going to show up. And one night at that open mic, Angelo Moore showed up. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it was him at first, but then I realized it was. And he comes up to the microphone. And Angelo Moore comes up, it's like, oh my God, it's Angelo Moore. And all of a sudden, we're in a Fishbone concert. But you have to, they're not playing instruments, it's just him. And he pulls out his actual personal journal, and in handwritten form, he reads the poem, "They All Have Abandoned Their Hopes." which is an amazing poem that he had written that he then turned into a song off of the album that they were working on at the time, Give a Monkey a Brain and He'll Think He Rules the Universe, which is their famous record that came out after the big one, Reality of My Surroundings, because they had like a big 3 records that the labels really got behind, and the third one was Give a Monkey a Brain. It didn't do nothing, and I think they got cut or something. But that song is incredible. That album is incredible.
So wait, so the title of the poem is the same title of the song?
I believe so. I think on the record it's called "They All Have Abandoned Their Hopes," or they might have retitled it as a different song. But that's the poem, and he read it from the book exactly as it appears on the record that would come out a year later. So I felt like I was a witness to history on that, just because, I don't know. Angelo Moore is very Valley, Fishbone's very Valley, you know. Seeing that and being a part of that was amazing. And I that was the thing. I was young, and I was arrogant, and I schmoozed him afterwards, which I looking back on that, I'm kind of like, I'm not that guy, you know what I mean? I just leave people alone or whatever. But Angelo was so cool. It was like, I went up to him, I was like, hey, Angelo, where's the bone tonight? He's like, oh, I don't know, they're hanging out somewhere. You know, he was just so nice and personable. And I was a poser, you know, I was trying to break in as a stand-up even back then, and I don't know if he saw my act or anything. I hope he didn't, you know. So, but he was nothing but generous and nothing but decent, and I got to. It's weird. I was in the room with genius. I don't know how else to describe it. And I don't know. You brought it up, Fishbone. I hadn't thought about that in 20 years.
So you're saying that so it was a full year before you actually saw. I mean, you saw the roots. You saw the seeds. Actually, you saw the seeds that grew into that song. That must have been crazy when you actually heard it. I mean, what was that reaction like? Where were you, and what happened when you first heard that song?
I bought the record when it came out. I just bought the record. And this is in the era of CDs, so that I'm going to date myself, you know, right there. So you would buy the CD in a long box. Remember that long box? And there was complaints against the long box being unenvironmental, and then Spinal Tap came out with the extra long box. Remember that one? I thought that was genius.
That's great.
Right? So I bought it, you know, like the warehouse or something. I don't remember where I bought it from. And came home, put it on CD player, listen to it, and I was like, I know that song. Why do I know that song? I've never heard this record before. Oh, I know this song because I've heard this before. Weird, you know? It's like, oh, that's how it works. It gave me a perfect window in on the process of creativity. You know what I mean? I mean, he could have, when I saw him actually do that, he could have written it that afternoon. I have no idea. It was, you know, it was in long. It wasn't like he was pulling out a tight piece of paper or anything like that. It wasn't like he was taking out the album lyrics or anything like that. No, he had written it in his journal that day and was expressing it that night because he knew he had to say it, obviously, a couple times to get the rhythm right and to get. I'm sure he changed a word or two and all that crap, but it was all there. And so I went from just him saying it in front of us, raw, to it being within the legitimate parameters that we considered released music, especially at the time. You know, CDs, which is, for a kid like me, I was 20 or 20, 30, 22, I don't know. It was mind-blowing. It was like, oh, I think I just bore witness to the entire process of creativity from mind to marketplace. You know what I mean? And they're all relevant, and they all matter, you know?
How did that affect you once you saw that process of creativity where you're like, ooh, that's where it began, and ooh, now I hear the end product? Like when you saw someone that you really highly respected, how did that...
Yeah. Here's the thing, like, at that era in my life, I was high all the fucking time. So I just was like, yeah. It was just like one moment to the next, a wormhole moment from one moment to the next. I couldn't tell you what I was thinking. In fact, I haven't put the pieces together completely until this moment in terms of what I actually have experienced. And things like that I've experienced, you know, my whole life. I can't think of anything at the moment, but that's an example of one of them. So, I you know, where that put me as a creator, that made me say, oh, you know, here's the process. You know, this is achievable. This is how it happens.
Did it give you comfort when you go to create your own stuff that you go, hey, look, I have this solid thing in my brain of someone doing this, and now, like, everybody goes through this kind of thing?
I think so. I think it gave me a blueprint, and whether or not I chose to read that blueprint or not was up to me. You know, you have to activate it. And I think there was a part of me that was very passive for a long time and just said, oh, isn't that cool the way that one moment led to the next? Like the way you describe synchronicity. Oh, look at that. So obviously that's okay because you have to be open and receptive. But there's also a part of me that's like analytical and wants to discover the meaning behind that process. Mm-hmm. And the every nut and bolt that in regards to that. And that's where the fun is now as I'm older. Because I don't take things for granted.
Well, thank you.
Oh, look at it. We got pancakes, we got eggs, we got french fries.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so did you have an idea that when he played that poem, did he give any context of saying, this is a song I'm working on, or he just read it?
Just read it. He mentioned
Thank you very much.
nothing about the record or anything like that.
Thank you. My compliments to the chef. My gosh, this coffee is so good.
It's delicious.
Thank you.
As I recall, maybe he mentioned. I don't think so though. I don't recall anything like that. I think he was just up there doing it because Fishbone's history was so shaky. Maybe he didn't know that it would turn into a record at that point.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was working on solo stuff and he's like, man, fuck that band, because they had so much drama. You know, who knows? Who knows what the genesis was?
When you heard him reading that poem, did it click in your brain at all in those moments where you go, ooh, wouldn't that be cool if this were an upcoming song, or did you just kind of take it for what it was?
I mean, I remember just thinking he's on a roller coaster ride and we're all kind of just with him on it. You know, I saw it as a poem. I didn't see it as song lyrics or anything like that, or even a song. And I think that's what his goal was. I think he wanted to really the poem itself. I can't quite remember. We could probably get it on the computers, but it was just all about abandonment and people who have given up and perseverance or something. I don't know what it was. It was, you could tell he was going through something.
It's cool when a poem, when lyrics can stand on their own, all by themselves, then you know it's a really good song, right? Because if they just could sit there on their own, kind of like when you listen to an acoustic guitar and you go, ooh, that's a great song. And then they add other things to it and you're going, oh my gosh, they really spiced it up.
I think, it just gave me a window in on a genius and their process. That's all. That's how I saw it. And now, as I'm older, I choose to unwrap that gift. I don't think I did for a lot of years. Eventually, I remember thinking, "Oh wow, that poem was what he did," And I did the math, slowly but surely. But it's, But these days, it's like I take every moment like that now very,
Thank you.
very, very seriously. I don't know. I mean,
Do you think it's important for fellow artists to see the process of who their favorite, I don't want to say idols, but who their favorite musicians or influences, go through?
I think I've heard the expression "never meet your idols," because it'll crush you in terms of they won't live up to, because it's just a person.
But in terms of seeing their process, like I always get excited whenever I see behind the scenes.
Whenever work is something different.
Yeah.
I can remember when growing up, I watched documentaries like the Sting documentary. He did what was that? He did the Dream of the Blue Turtles record and album, and then Bring on the Night was the documentary that they released with it, and then there was a live record for that. And I loved all that aspect of, because they showed him in the studio, writing that first, and they created drama with it. If you think about it, it was just all like, will he survive the legacy of the Police? All that stuff. Will he write these songs, and will we accept him as Sting? All this shit, whatever. And I was like, oh, I was like only 17 or 18 when that came in. I was like, oh, I hope we accept him as Sting.
You hope we accept him?
Shit like that. So, and that night, stuff like that does fascinate me. That is going to help you. That is as part of the process, I think. Because, that's why I
Let's see. I'm going to see if I can jam this into a holder. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Test 1 2. Yeah. I mean that's why you have reading. I love it. A lot of the time, I mean that's what we discuss on this podcast is that process in terms of where it comes from and where it's going, because it's all relevant and it all plays into it. And I am a fan of that. And I like the movies and books and writings that I am a fan of, that I try to write, that I try to express of the same ilk. I want people to know the exact process of what's happening as well as what's happening. I don't just want it to be a movie. I want it to be a movie about a movie or some shit. So yeah, I mean that adds an extra layer to it that I find fascinating, and I always have. It goes back to postmodern thought and creativity, and author named Borges that I studied in college and all that stuff. I did the basics of study in terms of postmodernism and how it plays itself out on our reality, and it's not an easy thing to unravel, and people don't exactly want that. But I think in terms of comedy and art, I think it's what we're after. I think that's exactly what Andy Warhol was about, and Andy Kaufman, and everyone in between. And I think that there's nothing wrong with the other side. I think you need both. I think you need conventional as well as something else, something beyond. And,
Which way do you go?
that's what I respond to, and that was coming through that.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is that like when we get a chance to see people who we appreciate, who have inspired us, and we carry those songs with us through the years, or we love that art or whatever. When we get a chance to see their process, I think it offers us that possibility of embracing, I mean, yes, when we initially come across this stuff, all we're presented with is the finished product, the genius aspect of it. When we're given that gift of being able to see the process of it, now we go, oh my gosh, now it's a human who's creating something, who has their own struggles or their own, it gives you this idea that there's a process to it, and you might as well just go ahead and fall in love with it. Because imagine, like, if the stuff that we wanted to have happened so immediately, would we actually appreciate it when we had it? Or do we appreciate it more when we kind of have to go through something to get it? It's like the quest, it's like fighting the dragon, and then the quest really is worth something. Right. But if you were just given the gold by the king, like, here you go, I mean, yeah, oh wow, that's awesome. But the fact that you had to go through this whole big crazy thing to get that, it's
Absolutely.
Like, oh my gosh.
That gives it relevance, I think. Mm-hmm. It's always, I don't know why, maybe you could have... Do you want to pause it?
We have only the highest the what do they call it? Almost only the highest definition here on the
tech behind the show is absolutely just cutting
edge. We're jamming the phone into a salt and pepper shaker now. I remember just how dumbfounded I was when I first saw behind-the-scenes footage of Star Wars when those guys are flying the Millennium Falcon.
That's a great example.
Oh, boy.
When Star Wars came out, they had essentially created a magic that really no one had done before. And you want syrup?
Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to...
Here we go.
So to hang those more towards it. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. What can I? I'm trying to find something good and stable.
Process.
It really is. This is part of the process. Oh my gosh. No. Let's see. What do we do here?
Use somehow?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's gonna work.
Here we go.
Gives it a little bounce. Take a picture. You got to put this.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh
yeah, I'll take a picture. Or let's take a picture with yours. Yeah.
Where's my phone? Cutting edge technology.
That's right.
Oh. Look at that. Look at that.
Cutting edge technology. You just cannot deny it.
There it is. Okay.
Goodness.
Can you edit and all this stuff?
We're screwed.
We're screwed.
Yeah.
All right. Here I am talking about editing.
We get to hear all the sloppiness.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember, but
Star Wars.
When Star Wars came out, about remember back in the 70s, movies played for longer in the theater. It was out for months, and so that was a big deal, right? And then they finally got it out of theaters.
Yeah, I did.
And,
I was looking for.
it was about to be on television or something, but part of the hype behind it was to do features about the making of Star Wars. And I don't know if you remember, but there was one that they called SPFX, the Star Wars story.
That's amazing. You remember the title of it.
Absolutely. Because what it did, it was like an hour special. It was hosted by Mark Hamill I think it was Mark Hamill. And he's just talking, and I think he talked with Lucas and Douglas, I believe he talked with Douglas Trumbull and I forget his other name. The guys who were behind the effects, and they walk us through sequences, right? So the X-Wing and the TIE fighters fighting on the Death Star, those plateau shots, and then they would cut, so they'd show the scene from the film, and then they would cut to being on set and showing the first ever computerized movement tracks and shit like that, and how they would line those shots up.
Wow.
And they explained green screen and animation and all that stuff. I just remember watching that, I was just like, you know what I mean, just dying.
And then when they were showing the Return of the Jedi stuff, where they built little dolls, they built little action figures, and they did the speeder bike scene through the Endor Forest. Remember that one?
Yes.
They cut together like a poor man's version of it.
Look at you.
Well, that's all I want to say. But they cut together like a poor man's version of it, where they got a little tiny Luke and
But
Leia.
that was probably the first time that they did previs, because that's pre-visualization.
Mm-hmm.
So, that whole part of it fascinated me, and it still does. And it kind of, I think that it helped keep me interested. And now that I know all these inner secrets of Star Wars, I want more. And that probably, I'm guessing, that fueled my Star Wars psychosis that I suffer from to this day. So why wouldn't it? And I think that these movies were so huge and so important that these were the first films that had to have that. You know what I mean? Because they weren't character driven; they were effects driven, and people wanted to know what the hell was going on with that stuff. And so that whole market came out. And if you think about it, when DVDs started coming out, there was always a making of at the beginning of the DVD.
Oh yeah.
It became the sort of the extras feature. I'd always watch those because I loved it, and I love. Depending on the film, I absolutely love director's tracks when they, you know what I mean, when they comment on their film.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they just start going off on, the key grip was an asshole, shit like that. And just shit that you would never know, And they don't mind.
Thank you.
They don't mind talking shit or whatever. They realize that now's the time. But it was also like film school. I remember one of the first ones that I remember watching was the Player. Robert Altman, The Player, 1991. We would watch. Me and John Girotta would sit in our dorm, and that was our class. Because he had gotten the Laserdisc Criterion collection of The Player. And that's with director's track, Altman talking over each scene, saying, yeah, we wanted to do it this way, we didn't do it, we wanted to have a comparable opening shot compared to Touch of Evil and all that stuff. I'm like, what the hell is all this stuff? It was fascinating. That was class. We would skip class to just watch that. Smoke weed and watch that. And then from then on, I was a complete Altman head. I was like, I need to study whatever it is that he did. Just in terms of how he put a film together. Brilliant stuff. And a lot of that was fueled as a result of, the behind the scenes and the director's track and that process of the process. I still find it fascinating. I'm always on Wikipedia, who is this person or whatever. Who are they? Do they have a wiki page? I'll just read that because that helps fill in the gaps in terms of what's going on with the story.
It's neat to see what motivations, what inspirations, and what perspectives those directors are coming from when they create that product. That's why I love those, like you're saying, the commentary, the behind-the-scenes stuff, because you get to see, like they're going, oh, I was reading a lot of, I don't know. I was reading the Odyssey at the
Right.
time, and I decided to, there's this part in the Odyssey where this happens, and I thought,
Right.
wouldn't that be great if there was a scene that was kind of similar to that, but we just dressed it up a little differently, but it still echoes that spirit. You're going, wow, that's great.
They always have random references, things that you would never think of.
Oh, right,
you know.
right.
I was watching a Tide commercial and I thought, boy, that'd make a great battle scene or something. That was an example. That was hyperbole for comedic effect.
And the beautiful thing is, when you see that, I think it's important for creative people to see that kind of stuff, because then what it does then is they see reflections of themselves in those people. I mean, the stuff that we're drawn to, we're seeing reflections of ourselves in it, in a sense. There's something about it that's magnetizing it to it. So we see a piece of ourselves, and I think when we see these wonderful things happening, and we're being inspired by these particular authors or musicians or whatnot, and we go, oh my gosh, what was their idea in making this thing? And then we see it, and then we go, holy cow, that gives me assuredness, that gives me excitement, and it allows me to kind of give me a pat on my own back, give me a stamp of approval with what we might think are strange ideas that we just scribble down in the journal, like a weird name for a character, or could you imagine how many crazy weird names George Lucas has in an idea book someplace that just went, and then there they are. There are those names that he puts in the
There's no
movies.
name generator or anything like that. He just was coming up with those. I was trying to figure that one out. It's like, how did he design names like that? How does that work? And it goes back to language and languages that he had studied, or I don't know. I have no idea. And I found that fascinating. So.
Well, wouldn't it be interesting too if we end up finding out that after this whole time it was like maybe there were anagrams of his grandma's name, or an anagram of his next door neighbor's name, or his dog's name, or what have you, and they stick that together.
Like French toast, so I spelled it backwards and put a couple extra umlauts.
That's right. What I always loved was that the action figures each action figure had a story. Oh, that was my first introduction to looking, the idea that background characters still have a history to them, and so here comes these action figures, and there's Hammerhead, and you're going, what? This dude has a name? And here's his story? Wow.
Right.
Or IG-88, they never say these people's names in the movie, but it's freaking beautiful, and then you see this little list of these things. Any of those background actors could possibly become a trading card or an action figure with a whole history behind him. Or a movie.
I think that's the idea. I mean, that backstory. It's like, I think Lucas, when he was concocting Star Wars, he's like, this might make movie. This might make the movie. This might not. I don't care. I'm going to write it anyways with a full backstory. And I've heard stories about him. He's got full worlds created that we've never seen. He's got full stories. He was a consultant on the Clone Wars, the series. And there's just a fascinating amount of detailed, brilliant story and character on that show that it's like. And I did the director's track, and I listened to Dave Filstein, I think his name is. He's like the George Lucas of that show, and he talked about how George would just come in with ideas. They were more brilliant than anything we came up with.
Incredible.
He was still coming up with ideas even as late as season 6 of Clone Wars. So what does that tell you in terms of process? It never stops for him. I heard that that's part of his frustration with the sign over to Disney, is that he's not in the mix as he was. And it's like, well, that's why they paid you $4 billion. You gotta go. I think
He could have taken $2 billion with the caveat that he can still collaborate on these ideas and stories, because it all came out of his brain. It's unfair to take the founder out of the equation when he was the guy who frickin' built this whole dance floor that everyone's dancing on.
It doesn't matter. I think that he said, I need help. And I think that he understands that there are other stories that could be told. And I think he liked that concept of it. And the $4 billion doesn't hurt, obviously. But,
if you say that he's got all these worlds built it up and everything.
He's a world builder.
So let's say he's got all these worlds built. He's got $4 billion and plus who knows ever how much. He could easily fund, a lot of $10 million films with these worlds, that he's created. It's dumbfounded me that all these years he's only directed a few of those things. What, Howard the Duck? He had something about airplanes in the sky. He had
I know the airplane movie.
he had the help with the Star Wars, of course. And what the heck else did he work on?
Well, oh boy, I don't know. That's going into deep George Lucas lore.
Oh, that's right, THX 1138. But it's like,
That's a classic.
holy moly!
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti.
Yeah, I mean, Electric Labyrinth at USC as a grad student, that led him to THX 1138 with Robert Duvall, which is not a bad film. It's not a great film, but it's the right film that he was supposed to make at that time because it's got amazing vision to it and a great car chase at the end.
And probably it helped Robert Duvall. That was the thing that probably helped elevate him.
Duvall was already broken in, kinda, but I'm pretty sure that got him Godfather. So yeah. So I mean, you always see those that right movie at the right time. Reservoir Dogs for Quentin Tarantino, El Mariachi for Robert Rodriguez. There's a lot of them. These are just guys they're the prodigal child, and we know that they're going to be big. Spielberg with Duel, or Spielberg with Firelight, whatever that Firelight film before that. Even we all knew that's like make room. That was the studio saying make room, and they were because they knew, and Coppola knew. Coppola gave Lucas his first job, or not his first job, but a big job on American Graffiti. I mean, Coppola wanted him for directing. I believe that. Yeah, Coppola and hired Lucas for American Graffiti, and then Lucas wrote and directed it. And there was a connection there between them on Gatsby as well, so whatever. But I mean, everyone knew, make room for these guys. Make room. And they did. And I think that every artist should have that, but they don't. And that hurts.
I think, I've realized, we've learned that we can actually now make our own room we can make our own room, by simply creating the art that we want to create in the world. And I think that's why I'm so excited about being able to, the fact that, K-Chung was down, but here we have a mobile radio station. How crazy is that?
That's the comedy
right?
of it.
Or
we're bitching and moaning that we don't get a shot or anything like that, but I mean, we've got a whole radio station in our hand right now. And if we do this right, 1 million people could listen to it. Maybe someday.
Well, it's interesting because that's what's interesting because with this the fact that we can have our own radio stations, the fact that we can have our own production companies. How well we got a camera on our phone. Okay, shot a movie. All right, I edited it on my phone and up it goes. I mean, it's astounding. Music too. We got GarageBand. Cool. Now you can be your own freaking record label just by making stuff on there.
Yeah, but the comedy of that is yes, this technology is more user friendly than it ever has been. And more accessible and more reasonably priced, but I'm sorry if you get a room full of equipment in and there's a bonehead at the control. It's just you're a bonehead with a bunch of crap. What gets better, that person as an artist or that person's gear? You know what I mean? That's been the lifelong question that has possessed me. It's like, oh, is that person? Wow, that person's got a new rack or that person's got a new thing or whatever. Look at the fucking access that they just got. Okay, what are they going to do with it? You know what I mean? Let's step up,
I've met a lot of folks like that who've just got all this crazy technology, and I'm going, okay, so what have you made in the past 20 years that you've had all this stuff? What have you done? I don't know. I fiddled around. Here's a little thing, and I'm going, well, dude, let the artists into that playground and play. Let someone show you.
He thinks he is the artist. He is the genius, and I'm writing my magnum opus. It's been 15 years, and you're a garbage man or something. I particularly living in LA and being, not involved in our level of the artistic scene or whatever. You're always walking into a room, a spare room off the converted den or converted guest room or garage that is now such and such's studio for such and such purpose, and it's always looks great and the equipment is perfectly relevant and studio quality. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's like, okay, I'm here. I'm ready to listen to the output. You know, that yes, I am a fan of the process. Clearly, what I'm staring at in this room right now are racks of effects or whatever, and the process that got you there. So, what do you got? You know what I mean?
That's why I think it's so admirable. Like people like Weird Al playing Another One Rides the Bus in his bathroom with a freaking accordion, and you know, if we were to look at it in a practical mindset, you know, this day and age, and go, oh well, how did that happen? Well, what's so crazy is he did the best he could with whatever he had, and he, you know, who knows how many radio stations he sent it out to. Evidently, Dr. Demento got a hold of it and started playing it. It starts becoming this fun fan favorite thing, which grew within the underground. That's one of the things that excites the hell out of me is that, you know, that phrase. And this is what's so beautiful about cliches. At first, when we hear cliche, we're like, oh, okay, blah, 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 blah. But then once you actually live the cliche and you go, oh, okay, I understand the cliche.
What cliche did you live?
The cliche I was going to bring up was every dog has his day. That idea of like everyone, I've seen this time and time again throughout my years of seeing, you know, a band that I came across. Well, heck, you know, like you're saying, like in open mics and stuff. Mm-hmm. People that I grew up seeing in open mics and everything, and all of a sudden, and there they've risen through the years. Or even comic books. Oh, yeah. Who would have thought that comic books and geeks and nerds and computer stuff would ever find, you know, have a day where, you know, it's a true Revenge of the Nerds moment now in this moment in time. Way back then, people, oh, it's a nerd, blah, blah, blah. People making fun. Well, now you got these sexy girls dressing up like in frickin' superhero costumes at the comic convention. It's amazing. Like, you got more people now who know about gigabytes and terabytes and whatever than ever in history, and it's crazy. Little kids who know this technology. So then I'm wondering, what are the next things that are coming about? Well, I think what I've been noticing in the way that consciousness is working is that there's becoming a lot more media that's blending dream life with waking life in terms of very surreal things. It's becoming so much more of a prevalent thing now. It's growing, where people are not watching a movie and getting taken out of it. It's almost like they've been trained already through watching all these other movies and TV shows. So when they see a movie where, let's say, a big, you know, a puppet pops up, hey, how you doing, Craig? Now, no one's taken out of it. They're just like, oh, okay, that's just how this world is. You know, it's like becoming more of a, kind of an acceptable thing. Sure. And I think it's gonna, I mean, we see it in commercials all the time now. Commercials are crazy with absurdity now.
Reality is being extended. Best example to build on what you just said in terms of show business. I don't know why I'm Johnny Show Business today, but fuck it, I'm in Johnny Show Business mood. This stuff's just rolling through my head, so whatever. Melissa McCarthy has a movie coming out midsummer in about 3 months.
I saw the trailer.
You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Murder on Sesame, not Murder on, something like that. And I watched the trailer and I could not stop laughing. It looked fucking hysterical. And I can't wait. But that's a great example of what you're talking about, because what we have in that film is a recontextualized environment, essentially, that has within its parameter free-talking, anthropomorphized puppets, right? So the joke for us, because we're of a certain age group, that's absurd, because they're puppets, they're manufactured, and obviously it's a ventriloquist. But you've got a whole generation coming up behind them. We'll call it ages 0 to 18, who are going to watch that film, and their brain is still wet. They're still accepting shit. So obviously they're smart enough to understand that Muppets aren't real. However, that boundary will be bounced upon, and I think penetrated on some level in terms of being able to accept the fact that it's a puppet-driven reality. And and at a certain point, as I think as a reality, it'll become passé. They'll understand it, and they'll live in it for a while, and then they'll need something else, and then that will spur up something else.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Well, what's interesting is that it loops right back around. So okay, so you know what's going on in this movie. It's so funny because it's, well, no, you do, because the thing is that what's going on in this movie right now, what's so funny is it's just a blueprint of Sesame Street, but it's a rated R, you know, kind of thing. Right. I think one of the Hensons is actually involved with it, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's Brian Henson's film. It's a Henson. I know that. So yeah, it
So-
looks great.
So what's
I
so
think-
interesting is as little kids, you could as soon as people realize that it's a kids show or TV show, they're like, oh yeah, well let's get crazy and surreal and right. Everyone's thinking outside of the box. Oh, it's for kids. Blah 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 blah. Well, why haven't we always been thinking that way for adults as well? Like, it's funny that now it's okay to piggyback on what you're saying. So those kids are going to grow up, and then that's going to be their basis of this blending of surreality, so to speak, which is so funny because their starting point is Sesame Street and ideally Mr. Rogers and that type of stuff. So then when they see that there's a movie out there, there's not going to be they're not going to have to leap. In other words, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm making a jump from kids stuff to adult movies now. Well, the adult movies have now become what the kids movies in TV shows always knew all along.
I see it as a language that's expanded, but also a border. I guess you could call it like a perception boundary that
Ooh,
humans.
that's a good way. Perception boundaries.
A perception boundary, sort of. I'm sure this is all pretty basic stuff in terms of philosophy, but the way I would describe it is like you and I have a certain level of perception, and when we grew up, that perception came into being, right? It didn't happen overnight, but it happened fast. It's like a sponge. You take in a reality and you accept that reality, and then that reality becomes concrete. You know what I mean? So in essence, because you and I are adults, it's harder and harder for us to expand that parameter. And I think what happens is in different cultures and in our culture, at certain key points, if you do hallucinogenics, you can expand that parameter and understand different levels of perception.
Thank you so much. It's so delicious.
So, but I think what's going on in our reality as we evolve is mainstream art is definitely becoming accepting of those parameters as well. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it will influence art to a point where, like you just described, a child sort of watching that will not. It won't necessarily affect them and make them evil or anything like that. I don't think that. I think that that's a myth, but I do think it can affect them to the point where they have a perception boundary that's one click beyond where we were at that age, and that to me is evolution. And if so, and it's a tiny little step, and if you think about it, with each generation that occurs a little more and more and more, a person, if there were, let's just say, a person who lived in who lived and was our age in the year 1918, so 100 years ago, and they were watching us, they would have an extreme difficulty, first of all, with language, with our cultural surroundings.
Do you mind if I cash you guys out? You're welcome to stay as long as you want.
Sure.
My ship's in.
Oh, that's some things never change, though. That's what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Curt is picking up. I want that noted. Curt is picking up the check. Do the Inspirado Projecto podcast.
Yeah, I'm putting it on the K-Chung Radio business account.
Free fries and coffee to everyone. You can only order to the left of the omelets, though. No Cobb salads. Stay away from the shrimps, please. The flank steaks. Oh, yes, we have a yes on flank steaks. No to prime rib.
Flank steaks. One thing I was just thinking was, okay, so as a kid grows up, at some point they start denouncing the shows and stuff that they grew up with because they start going, oh, that's just for kids. I don't like that anymore. Right? So what's beautiful is the way that the direction is heading in. The great news is they will never, ever have to be apologetic about that programming that they grew up loving ever again. They will never have to be apologetic about it. They can always go, oh yeah, I still like this. Oh yeah, of course I like Mr. Rogers. Because the movies, like you're saying, will then have a lot more of that blending of the surreality.
There will be a bridge there.
Thank you.
In our time, it was I didn't like that, or I don't want to talk about that stuff. I want to be cool.
Yeah,
I think.
right.
Yeah, I think in terms of future generations.
Yeah.
The conversation will start with Mr. Rogers or whatever that is, and then it has to be an accepted part of the present reality as well.
Yes.
All of it will be taken in for sure. I do. Yeah.
I'm thinking of
Thank you for the fries.
Oh, you're welcome. I was thinking about like how YouTube Bless you, bless you. I started thinking about how YouTube. This happened a number of years ago. I was over at someone's house and we were watching. I think it was at my brother's house. We were watching when he was living out here. We were watching the Super Bowl. And they always have these commercials. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of absurd commercials. And in addition to a lot of these absurd commercials, number one, I celebrated and going, okay, good. It's penetrating the atmosphere. The thing that I saw through was that these people were really trying to downgrade the quality of it to make it look like it was made on YouTube.
Yes.
They were actually trying to make these commercials look like they were trying to compete with what was going on YouTube. So let's say you've got some little kid who's in his bedroom, talking about, I don't know, just talk about Star Wars all the time.
Yeah.
He's got 3 million followers and he's making money. Well, guess who wants a piece of that? These advertisers and they're going, well, I'm spending $3 million on this commercial and this kid's doing this and blah, 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 blah. Why don't we just put out a $500 thing, just get a camera at Best Buy, let's just shoot the commercial. So I started seeing that kind of aspect.
You know what? They don't even do that. What they do is they hire that full production company and they spend the $30 million on the account, right? And the production company is laughing all the way to the bank because they're like, we got to fake, a phone image, right?
Yeah.
Well, in theory, okay, why don't we just do a phone image in there? Yeah, we do that, but we've got all this really cool, expensive gear, so let's use that. So that's why that's why you're able to detect it also, because the tech on those commercials is so cutting edge. It's like, no, you're taking a 4K. What is
And trying to make it look like it was done on a VCR.
Taking a 4K red camera with the fucking standard lens, right? And you've got a full 3 lens package there on set. You've got mic, re-record, all of it pre-re-record. I don't know if
you got the video village. You got all the grips and the
set up, just to get it right, and yelling at the actor, Billy, get it right. When Billy's not on camera, he speaks with a Dutch accent, and he had 4 years at Harvard.
That's right.
So there's that aspect of it, and all of that is just imposed by corporate America wanting a taste of it, and sort of doing a Monday morning quarterbacking in regards to how can we get in on a promo, how can we get in on a marketing dollar that's already been spent, and that's classic advertising. Why do you think? That goes back to everything, every fucking sequel that we can think of, with notable exceptions, obviously Empire Strikes Back or whatever, suck. And why is that? Because the first film was honest and true, and they put their fucking soul into it, and a lot of their own money, or whatever it was, or a good solid amount of studio money and belief was in that first project, and they ran it well, and then part 2 comes around, and they're just like, just throw money at it, I don't give a shit, just about every sequel that I remember Another 48 Hours broke my heart because it was so fucking terrible.
Oh,
and then they did the same thing with Beverly Hills Cop 2. I was like, you're killing me. You're fucking killing me with this shit. Because they took a movie that was initially corporate movie, 48 Hours, the first one, they made it for maybe $5-10 million, but they knew they had Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte in it, so it was definitely, there were corporate interests involved that banked on its success.
Thank you.
And it fucking hit, man. It's one of my favorite films. It's hysterical. It's exciting. It's everything. So what do? They come back around. Oh, we got to do the sequel. Here we go. They spent $40 million on the budget or something like that. Depending, God knows how much on below the surface in terms of what their salaries really were. Tony Scott, I think, directed it, or it's either Tony Scott or something like that. The script was horrible. It looked fantastic, and it was just a complete pile of shit. Same shit is going on with what you're describing in terms of they want a Monday morning quarterback, a whole YouTube-esque kid campaign for the sake of dollars, and it's gross. It's just marketing.
Seeing that, what excites me and what enthralls me is the fact that while a general populace is looking at YouTube and going, oh, what am I going to do, make the movie and put it on YouTube? While the general populace is like looking at it in that way, what's comforting and crazy and exciting in a very strange and demented way is that the corporations are looking at it and going, wait a second, this is something we got to pay attention to here. Because if that's the case, it's like the snake eating its own tail. It almost puts you right back at the starting point now of going, hey, you know what now? I'm just going to trust in my visions and follow them where they're going and see what happens and where does it go. And that's the beauty of like to get back to George Lucas and having his idea book of all these worlds. Yeah. Here he is. He just followed his he didn't know where these ideas were going to be. Like Angelo Moore with his ideas, he just like, okay, here's a poem, not knowing what was going on. But then maybe one day in the studio, there he was with those guys, and they're playing some funky thing. He's like, ooh, I think I got just the lyrics. He runs over, gets his journal, he just starts singing along to it, and oh, look at that! This thing that I wrote X amount of years ago had no idea that this day would arrive, and it's so amazing how that works.
The creativity of an idea can be different from the calculus regarding the engineering of that idea, right? So you're writing an idea that is you're not quite sure what it is. It's a poem. It's a story idea. I don't know. And then 3 years go by, and then before you know it, you realize, oh, it is this. It is actually going to fit into slot X as opposed to Y or Z.
Well, what's crazy for this, and this might actually be something, since you got so many ideas, when you start your podcast, something I started doing was looking through all my old journals, and I'm just reading my ideas. Just going, I'm reading these ideas. If you guys want to use them, you're more than welcome to. But let's collaborate on it. If you're going to use this idea for something, at least you'll
You're an exception to the rule in that regard, sir. I mean, it's rewarded to you tenfold. You're the premier keyboardist for Yali Crew, and you're up there, yeah, balls and buttons. So it's you are rewarded for your artistic endeavors, but there is a whole school of thought that says what's mine is mine, and I don't know where I stand on that, and for the most part, I really don't have too much of an issue with that. If somebody's going to steal a joke from me or something like that, okay, I guess so. I'm flattered more than anything else.
Well, it's interesting because I started looking at it like, okay, either A, these ideas stay in this journal, and then at some point I will create things with it, or B, it will just stay in that journal. No one ever sees it. The other aspect was, okay, if I start getting it out there, because the original idea was to just publish the journals. Just go, okay, here you go. Here are my ideas. Right. And I realized, well, if I were to hold on to these ideas and not let them be seen or be experienced, it's almost like a message to myself that I don't trust that I'll come up with other great ideas to do stuff. The other interesting thing is, to go along with what you're saying, is as I'm reading these journals, I'm coming across ideas that I wrote down that I am actually currently doing that I didn't even realize. It was back there in the subconsciousness, growing and growing. For instance, one of the things that I read in the journal, it said, create content for cell phones. Well, this was way before smartphones were out there. Create content for cell phones. And I just had that right down. And as I read it out loud, I go, boom, wait a second. I am actually creating content for cell phones right now as I'm reading this thing. And it just went, it just exploded in my brain. And I kept coming across all these other things where I'm going, well, okay, well, there's this idea. Oh, there's that idea. The other thing was, okay, if I read this out loud, in a sense, it's copyrighted, right? Because at least in my brain, I'm thinking, because it's there, it's documented. We have a date and time stamp on the thing,
Yeah, everything is safe in that regard. I think, I don't know what I can talk about.
Is it the idea of someone profiting off of the genius that beamed your antenna?
No, I think it's just the idea of profiting. I think it would, if it's a friend, I don't know, not even if it's a friend. I think that it's somehow a worthy cause or belief. I'm okay with it. I think what would bother me is if there's a disrespect involved or something, something of that nature. I don't know. I haven't really had too many experiences in that regard. I have seen other people have that issue. But with what you're describing, with what you're talking about, it sounds like a perfectly decent thing to do. Of course, that's and especially in the community that you're a part of, it's like that's you're open source in that regard. So it's gonna all come back to you.
Well, that's such a crazy thing, an interesting and weird thing too, because it's like I almost feel it like as no different than if I were to write a book of poems or if I were to write a book of these things. In a sense, this is my digital book of, because this podcast I treat like it's my sketchbook, like it's my idea book. Everything just goes right in here. So any number of things that I could say, whether it's an idea that I read from the book or that just pops off my brain because I'm talking with the genius at the table, all of those things, all of these things are possible, should I say, pieces of information that anyone can, whether I know it or not, even swoop in and utilize.
Right.
That's the crazy thing.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the litigation of it that only you and God can sort of deal with. I can say this much, like, in regards to plagiarism, blatant plagiarism and stuff like that, yeah, that's fucked up. That's, I don't know. I mean, maybe we've discussed this or not, but there's a whole issue in regards to copyright and just within screenplays and people who are submitting screenplays to agencies and studios, right? It's a big deal, and I'll send you a link privately. I mean, you can do with it what you want, and it's 50 cases in which it was individual screenwriter versus studio. Studio always won. Studio always won. Studio always won. I happen to be friends with one of those people. One of those. It was a team of writers. And
you saw how a studio took their idea and just went.
And it's all true. It's all true. They took an idea and made millions of dollars of it, and it got ugly. And my heart broke for them because they're wonderful people. And to this day, I'm still kind of like, I shake my fist at when I see seeing things that are related to it. And I'm like, but you can't let that eat you up. You'll die because you can't win.
I think the redeeming thing of it is forming a definition, when we look at it, forming a definition that goes, well, you know what? The thing I can celebrate is that evidently I got some astounding ideas.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be stolen. Otherwise, someone wouldn't take them. So then I might as well be the dude.
There's nothing but validation that could come from something like that.
Yeah.
Because you ain't got nothing else.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
absolutely, the validation side of it is going to kick in. You're going to use that as a form of therapy in order to get through the pain. What hurts is that it's showbiz, it's art, it's people. For me, it's people who are to the left politically and supposedly, on the right side of the fight and all that crap. And it's heartbreaking to think of my friends put their trust in X amount of people and into X organizations and institutions, and institutions that they were on the side of in a lot of ways, and in alignment with in a lot of ways. And they were completely betrayed. Just thrown out of the train while the train is still going, And to me, that sort of opened my eyes to, yes, I believe in what you describe in terms of collaboration and open source and giving and being decent. Of course, I will always embrace that. However, there are some wicked fucking evil people out there. And unfortunately, I think what happens is the institutions demand sacrifice or evil or something, because in the stories that I heard, as far as what turned out, it seemed like the people who stole, their jobs were on the line. They had to, you know what I mean? They had to publish or perish, I guess you would describe it. That'd probably be the best way to describe it. And that's what they did. So they just stole. They just stole.
Now, are you currently working on any new books that you're excited about?
Yes, I am.
Because we have basically 1.5 minutes here before. This won't let me record more than an hour.
Yeah.
So I want to
Get it
hear,
right.
and we can send people to your stuff.
Well, just Instagram, C Spivak. That's where I'm at. That's the easiest one.
Well, then also your current books that are out.
My book, Comedy Will Save Us All, is on Kindle. Just look up my name, and the book is there. Devil Country as well. That's good stuff. I am currently working on new short stories, and I'm doing stand-up again around town. And if you're in Los Angeles, just find me on Instagram, and I'll tell you where I'm gigging. I think that's
Dude, this was a delicious conversation. It was ripe, rich and ripe. All right, everybody, take care. Subscribe to Inspirado Projecto on iTunes. You can subscribe to it. All right, take care.